Hey there guys, Elita-Legionarii here, bringing you some Medieval 2 Total War action. I do apologise for the length of time by which I haven't uploaded anything, and I know I haven't uploaded any Medieval 2 in ages, but I've got a pretty interesting battle for you here today. It's not a real great battle, but it's a nice battle to illustrate some points about certain aspects of how you play the game and why certain things happen the way they happen, I guess, in certain scenarios. So this is what I call the Orthadox alliance. It's both myself and the Swedishlandsknekt with Orthadox factions, Russia with me and the Byzantine Empire with him. So this is on the township map, so this is always an interesting map to play on. I don't always like this map, not because so much because of what you've got to do on this map, but quite a lot of it's in the woods quite often. And I don't like the wooded maps that much on Medieval 2 Total War because the woods are very dense in Medieval 2. It can be hard to coordinate. But this map's not too bad. It's a bit of a mix, but it does require a lot of strategic and tactical planning and positioning, which I do like from this map. So it's good that it forces that on you. Anyway, my army consists of 2 units of crossbow militia, 4 dismounted Vor, I believe it was 3 British axemen and 1 woodsman for shock infantry, and then it was 4 dismounted Druzina. Then I had 4 Druzina cavalry, and I had a general's bodyguard and a Kazakh horse archer. This was set in the High Period. Swede was the host and he wanted to play some High Period games, and I'm glad he did that because when you play in the High Period, or like a great feature about Medieval 2 is the fact that you had 3 periods to choose from. You had the early, the high, or the late, or you could just go with the all period and have everything. I really like how in Medieval 2 Total War you can do that. It's a great feature because what it does is most people play the standard all period kind of area, and what it does essentially is you have kind of factions with their certain strengths, but if you change to a different era, it changes around which factions are stronger. So you have more diversity to the game by doing this, and it's a really great feature that I wished was implemented in other Total War games, because it's a very good feature. You can, like an early period battle, you have certain factions, like say the Byzantines for instance, are very good there, whereas if you play them in the late period, they're not. And another faction like Spain or Venice or something like that, or Milan, is stronger on the late period. And so you have these mixtures of factions that can be different strengths and different styles that can be employed as you play in different periods. It's a really good way of making more diversity to the game. Anyway, enough of that long-winded explanation. Let's have a look at Swede's army. He's got 4 units of Byzantine Guard archers, 4 units of dismounted Ladikon, and then 4 dismounted Byzantine lancers. So, as always, Byzantine infantry is fairly good. 2 for ranging and guard, and his cavalry's where he's going to have problems probably. The Ladikon are good cavalry unit, but not real great. It's a good unit though. It will compete. But then he's only got sort of Byzantine lancers, and I don't think he can get the Alan light cav in the High Period, which is a bit of a blow for the Byzantines because there's a very good cav for them. Anyway, he's also got I already mentioned that actually, Byzantine lancers. So that's our team. Our opponents are both France, which France is a very good choice in the High Period, to be honest. Because France still has access to so many good units in the High Period. If we have a look here, you've got Noble Knights and Chivalric Knights. Both are good knight units. Both are good at charging and good at melee. And you get those both in them in the High Period. They've got a couple of armoured sergeants. In my opinion, this team brings a lot of spears, and this was not a good idea. And I'll go into greater detail when the battle starts. But we've also got Flemish pikes from this guy. And then you've got the dismounted French archer. This is a very good archer. The armor-piercing arrows, long range, definitely one of the very best archer units in the game. Only probably say like some of the English archers, and then of course the Scots Guard are better. But this is a good archer unit. Like not many other regular archers would have much show against this archer unit. So, and couple that with dismounted Chivalric Knights and the cavalry they get, the French get very good units in the High Period. Again, the only problem that handicaps the French is the cost of their units. It's a very expensive faction to play. But actual variety and options available to the French are really, really good. They've got better options than me and Swedes, particularly me in regards that best infantry cavalry I can bring is the Drusina, which is not bad, but it's not great. My infantry, Russian infantry, is never very good. My missiles are good, but I cannot bring guns. So, to be honest, I'm definitely outclassed on terms of the overall effectiveness of France versus Russia in the high period. Although Russia is really good at rush strategies in the high period, if you know what you're doing. The general cavalry is inferior because they can't get their Tsar's Guard. And with Swedes, he's got good infantry, decent missiles, not as good as the French missiles. His cavalry's a lot weaker. His infantry's about even. So overall, they've got definitely the stronger factions in this battle in regards to what they can bring on the battlefield. This guy here has brought about 5 units of dismounted chivalric knights, 3 armoured sergeants, 2 dismounted French archers, 1 general's bodyguard, and then he's got 4 noble knights over here. So I've held it on pause long enough. Let's start the battle. Now, this particular guy here said that France has really bad morale and that this battle wasn't really very fair. And to be honest, his team has the advantage. There's no reason why, in terms of pure factions, they have the advantage. So France does not have bad morale whatsoever. But it's the way these guys play, and I'm not trying to trash these guys. It's not what I'm trying to do. I just need to illustrate what he's doing here. He's making an immediate move with his cavalry. Now, initially, I thought he was just going to make a bit of a feint against me, but he's actually going to commit to a full battle here. Now, right away, this is a really bad move. You're going to see why. What I do is I shift into the woods, which will make his cavalry less effective, and I keep my whole army near my own cavalry, so I draw my cavalry back. Now the reason I'm doing this is, you watch, I'm going to turn around and go for a counter. There's 2 reasons. I can support almost instantly with my own infantry, and I got missile support, and I got trees around me as well. Even though that adversely affects my cav, it also adversely affects his. And look at this, his cavalry routed instantly. This is why this guy thought his guys had bad morale. They don't have bad morale. What's happened to them here is they're so far away from their army, and there's only 4 of them, and I'm completely here with my entire army, so it's like 4 units in the vicinity of 20 units. The morale penalty is enormous. These French cavalry stood no chance. They're better. Noble knights are better cavalry than Drusina. They're considerably better cavalry than Drusina, but the whole problem was he initiated this attack completely isolated on his own, and then he sort of went around and said that the French have bad morale. That is not true. He simply put his units into a terrible position where their morale was so badly penalised, being so horrendously outnumbered and so far away from their support, that they routed almost instantly. If you are watching this and you're new to Medieval 2 Total War, do not think poorly of the Noble Knight. It is a superior cavalry to the Drusina, but it was very poorly used, because I had my entire army right here, 20 units versus 4. The morale penalty, the morale shock was massive, and he routed instantly. It was also very close to trees, and in Medieval 2 Total War, trees impair the performance of cavalry units, including my own, but I had other units nearby, so it didn't matter. And he got a better charge, but again, like with Drusina, you got to be a bit careful because they've got an axe. They're pretty good in melee, but all in all, that was just very bad use of his units there, which resulted in that happening. And some of his units regroup, but I'm going to chase them off. So here he is, a couple of dismounted French archers. I forgot about these dudes. He's got a couple of these guys here. So in this situation, if we just pause and take stock, that was a very bad start for this guy, because he's wasted his cavalry, and as you know, Medieval 2 Total War, you win your battles generally on the edge of your cavalry, probably 80 to 90% of your games. So losing your cavalry is like losing your best asset, really, especially for a faction like France that is very strong in their cavalry, and you know, it's really punishing to lose them. France has still got some great assets here, but if we look now, he's got no shield against cavalry now, except for these spears. But the problem is, spears in Medieval 2 Total War are really not that great versus cavalry, especially even if they get charged. They really need to catch them when they're stationary, and any sort of relatively competent Medieval 2 player is really not going to allow you to catch out their cavalry sitting on the spot. But what my opponent should do here is he should shift into the woods, because the woods will make my cavalry use more difficult. It will also give him cover from my missiles, and he's going to play into my strengths here. I'm going to try and stick in these woods as much as I can. My opponent doesn't move here. Just to give you an idea what's going on the other side, oh shit, I actually missed. Damn it. I didn't realise I missed that. My apologies to Swedes here, I missed his side of the battle, but essentially his opponent did exactly the same thing with their cavalry, as you can see. See these chivalric knights, noble knights, they got routed real easy. I've sent one cavalry to back it up, but Swedes' cavalry is definitely inferior. Well, not definitely, the Latercon's actually relatively even with the noble knights, maybe just slightly inferior, but the Byzantine lances are definitely inferior. But essentially the same thing happened here. Both these opponents sent their cavalry off on their own, and they were certain that the morale of French units was poor. That's not the case. They just put them into a very, very, very bad situation, where they were completely and hopelessly outnumbered, and the morale took such a heavy beating that they routed extra fast. So they wasted both their cavalry. So the team, they're at a massive disadvantage now, even though they actually had advantages in terms of quality of units, and that's cost them real bad. Again, that happened so quickly over there that I didn't even notice it. I really should have caught that. So my apologies to Swedes, but it happened so quickly. It was probably much, I mean, you saw how quickly they routed over here. It was pretty much the exact same thing on the other side. So what I do here now is, like, I've got a cavalry advantage, so I get really aggressive and force my opponent's hand. I can do that, it's a available option to me, but I don't need to do it for two reasons. I've still got all of Swede's cavalry and his army close by on hand to support, whereas this ally is over here. So Swede is immediately closer to me, so if I need his support, he's right there. But we have a cavalry advantage, and at this stage versus my opponent, I have a missile advantage. And with Russia, missiles are one of their probably, and especially in the high period, are probably their strongest asset, because they don't have the Tsar's guard. So I have no need to rush here. There's no pressure on Swedes. He can just come and back me up quicker than this French opponent can back his ally up. So this is going to be one of those battles where I just take my time, and I'm just going to shoot my opponent. And my opponent should not allow this. What this does is it allows me to set the pace and the tone. Me and Swedes are setting the pace and the tone. We don't have to use our cavalry aggressively. There's no need to do so because we already have a missile advantage over here. So we're just going to sit here and shoot them. I mean, it's a slow approach. We don't have to do it that way. We could rush them, but it's unnecessary. And we don't, at least in my case, the Drausina are not great charger cavalry. They don't have a tendency to do a lot of impact on the charge because they just use a tiny little spear, and don't have a great charge stat. I think it's about 5 or something. So really not that necessary to actually do that. It could be useful to pick up some of these archers, which are well placed here in the woods. They will be hard to dislodge in the woods without having to send in infantry. But my opponent really should actually attack me here, because one, he's giving Swedes time to come and reinforce me. He shouldn't allow this, because in terms of infantry, he's going to beat me infantry-wise here, unless I get some good cavalry hits on him, because his infantry is quite a bit better. French infantry is a lot better than Russian. Russian infantry tends to have quite bad morale. But he's just sitting here, and this is really bad, because I have more missiles than him, and I have much better cover. He's not going to do anywhere near enough damage to me, and I'm going to kill his guys off way, way quicker than him. That he kills me, and that's just playing into my advantages again. Not much happening on Swede's side. He's just moving around to back me up, and we're just going to shoot this guy together. So it's going to even make it even easier with all these missile units from both me and Swedes. Sorry guys, I've had a sore throat in the last couple of days, so I might sound a bit croaky at times. Anyway, I make a bit of a cav strike over here with my Drausina, but you can see that they're not entirely great on the morale. They rout pretty much right away and don't do much damage off the charge there, so you've got to be a bit careful with cavalry like this versus entrenched positions like this, in the woods especially. As you can see, my opponent brings his armoured sergeants forward. Again, this isn't a good move. It's a piecemeal attack, and they need those spears for the cavalry because they don't have any cavalry left of their own. But I'm going to use my shock infantry here, my birdie shacksmen. These guys will mop up these spearmen on the charge very, very quickly, and that's going to be pretty much, these guys are going to rout pretty much right away, as you can see. I also just want to pause again. You may have observed the way I deployed my guys. I had 2 units of crossbowmen up front, then 4 units of my Devore behind. Now the reason for this is crossbows are quite sturdy, even the cheap ones, even the militia ones, they can take quite a beating from regular archers, and they need a flat trajectory anyway, so they need to be up front. It's a good strategy you can use. You can get a couple of cheap crossbow units, put them up front, let them be the damage sponges, or if your enemy shoots at the units behind them, they'll still shoot for you anyway. Then you let your more superior archers like the Devore behind them shoot, and what should happen is a lot of players will shoot the militia guys while the archers that are really doing the killing, the Devore, are safely behind getting a lot of kills. The crossbows are really quite expendable. It doesn't really matter. They can even be a meat shield if there's a cavalry rush coming in. You shouldn't let them die needlessly, but it's a good strategy because you can just use the relatively cheap but still effective, if they sit around long enough and get some shots, militia crossbowmen to fire and absorb shots and hit a few of the infantry because they're crossbow units that are armor piercing, while your elite archers are behind and they're doing the major winning for the skirmish battle, which is what I'm going to do here, which is what I do in this fight. As you can see, these sergeant spearmen are going to get routed, and again, another major problem with these guys' army was they had far too much spears, and it's really it diminished from their skirmish capacity, which is a bit of a shame for them because their skirmish capacity was actually probably superior to ours. The only problem they seem to have with France will be the price of their units, which is very expensive. So now I'm going to charge these dismounted chivalric knights. Again, Dracaena are not good charging cabs, so I really don't have much impact going on here with my Dracaena at all. Although my own infantry probably got in the way, and as you can see, look at that British axeman routed instantly, even though if we look how much guys they lost here on the ground to archer fire, heaps. He probably lost half his infantry to archer fire. Even then, he still manages to pretty much rout my infantry units here. That goes to show you just how much superiority French infantry units have over Russian infantry units in a straight up fight, because the Russians are good in the aspects that they have the armor piercing weapon, but their morale is a lot lower. As you can see, look at that, another one goes, a full 42 men in that unit and just routed straight up versus these guys here, which are already heavily depleted from archer fire. Over this side, I got tired of these guys shooting me. They could be problematic. French archers are dangerous, and I wanted to have missile supremacy. He didn't get a lot of kills on me just because I was in the woods over there, but they could eventually kill a lot of my guys, so I've moved my guys to intercept them here. So 2 of my Dracaena are going to kill off these French archers before they become a nuisance. So again, also another thing in this battle, if you observe, is the deployment. Our opponents deployed far apart. Me and Swedes deployed together, so Swedes has not been able to do a lot in this fight except win his cavalry battle, but he's got reinforcements to me now, and this is where it's going to come in and play crucial. You can see that my dismounted Dracaena were losing, but Swedes was right there. The Varangian Guard follow up, great charge on the Varangians. If they get a good charge, they're going to really clean up, especially against depleted units like this. All the while, me and Swedes can just shoot at these remaining units in the back, and only just now is the other French ally arriving, and to Freed's Swedes. I'm talking too quick. Only now is he arriving, while Swedes has been here this entire time, and he's already backed me up. So it's important about deploying zones and how close you are, and how quickly you're going to back up your allies. So as you can see, Swedes gets a nice rout going once he brings in the rest of his infantry, and we're just going to push a little bit. We're not going to overextend. We've got a good position here. We've got our missiles still. We can just reorganize and we can shoot them up. There is no need to take pointless and wasteful risks when we're already winning. Again, there's a bit of a cavalry fight going on over here, I believe, as we're about to. As you can see, some French units start to rout there, and I believe the generals are going to fight each other here. My general versus this general. He gets a better charge though, but I've got other units that I'm starting to send around the flank, as you can see. But as I was saying, me and Swedes are just going to pull back and reorganize our forces and just continue shooting them. We could rush, we'd most likely definitely win. Swedes does push with his cav at a few exposed infantry. That's never a bad idea. Just make cycling charges. That's a great move, and I can cycle in from the back. Our opponents are pretty disorganized here, pretty chaotic, but we really don't even need to do this. We could just reorganize and shoot our opponents up with our archer units. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a safe way to play. It's an effective way to play. You don't need to take needless and pointless risks. It's not necessary. If you manage to establish an advantage on the battlefield and there's no rush to sort out another situation, then you should just skirmish, and it works effectively. This can apply to any Total War game. That's what we do for a little bit here. But as they're heavily depleted and we've won the cavalry, we're about to win the cavalry fight over on this side, we just decide to push in. And as you can see, between me and Swedes, my remaining Dragoner and his cavalry units, we just managed to pick up the last of these French archers and a few spearmen. As you can see, the armoured sergeants just really achieved nothing for them. Again, spear units in Medieval 2 are not very effective versus cavalry unless they catch them stationary, and a competent player never lets that happen. It's just really, it's a bit of a shame really, because I think spears should be a lot better than they are, because they were very capable units, and I think the spear in the medieval period was generally the major weapon of most group types of fighters, and it was effective. So that or the pike, I believe, it just depends on the period, but but as you can see, it didn't work out for them here, and that's just the way Medieval 2 is. You really should just get more archer units or more cavalry and not really bother with spears, unless it's just for a bit of fun, of course. But in terms of actual practicality, it's not necessarily that practical as far as Medieval 2 Total War goes. But at this stage, as you can see, we're just rushing the remainder of our opponents and about to finish them off. But again, they lost this fight. And again, as I say this stuff, I'm not trying to trash my opponents, but one of these players went on and on about how France has bad morale, and he wouldn't listen to what we were telling him. But they lost the cavalry in really bad engagements. Like, seriously, just threw their cavalry away at the start. And the French cavalry is superior to the cavalry that both me and Swedes were using. It actually is superior. But they put it in such a situation that they had such low morale, because it's like sending 4 units against their whole army. So it's like 4 units versus 20 units. It's just an overwhelming amount of morale shock for their cavalry, even though they're better cavalry. And they did that in both places and threw their cavalry away. And cavalry's literally the most important part of a Medieval 2 Total War army. It is the game changer. It's the winner. I've said this in like hundreds, well not hundreds, but probably said this like in like 50 videos of mine of Medieval 2 in the past. Honestly, if you lose the cavalry, the chances of winning the battle are enormously depleted. But not only that, the other mistakes they made was they left they took too many armoured sergeants, too many spear units, which depleted their own missile units. Against factions, especially my faction, Russia has a very good capacity for missile fire, very good missiles, even in the high period, and letting me basically have that missile advantage and not really doing anything about it, they got shot to pieces. I mean, this lot here was just completely wrecked by missile fire alone, mostly from my guys. Swedes came in later and backed up, and it just sped it up, but that was just me alone mostly with my dismounted Devore, which have hardly taken any losses and destroyed so many units. So they should never have allowed that missile duel to happen, but also by having so many armoured sergeants, they couldn't afford as many French archers. And French archers are actually better than Devore, because their armour piercing and their range, I believe, is slightly greater. So had they had enough of those, this wouldn't have been so one-sided, and they'd been more cautious and useful with their cavalry. But once they lost their cavalry and they let us shoot them up, it was over. So I come away with 685 kills, 301 captures, Swedes with 445 kills and 471 captures. It all basically evens out at around 900 to 1,000 kills a piece between the two of us. So a really great game there for us, but it just illustrates, like, these guys here were like, one of these guys, I think this guy here, was absolutely adamant that France had bad morale, and it's not true. France, in my opinion, is one of the better factions. The real weakness with France is the units are very, very expensive, and they don't really have a real specialised effective unit. They've got a lot of good stuff though, a lot of good shit in the French army. Historically speaking, in the medieval period, even though they weren't completely unified, the French were pretty bloody powerful in the medieval period. They were definitely one of the major power factions in the medieval period, historically speaking, and this game does a fairly good job of representing it. It's just that Medieval 2 Total War France is expensive, so low money games don't work very well for France. When you've got high money games France are definitely like right up there. Majorly good faction. And in the high period, they've got access to chivalric knights, noble knights, dismounted chivalric knights, French archers. That is a great mix. They've got good units in the high period, so there's no reason that they could not perform well with France. They obviously just didn't have the experience, but I don't like it when players kind of cheaply blame on a faction, especially when they sort of play badly. And I know that sounds kind of mean, but I'm not trying to trash these guys. I'm just saying it as it is, you know. Anyway, here's my stats here. The Dragoons, as you can see, didn't really do that well, to be honest. They didn't, like, straight up, they're worse than noble cavalry. They're worse, but or noble knights. But I just had that whole numerical situation going on. This cavalry was so isolated and far from a support that they routed immediately. But pound for pound, he'd beat me in a cavalry fight. It's where I did well was with the Devore, because I was allowed to just shoot them, and even the crossbow militia almost got 50 kills apiece. And they worked as their role as the front liners, because as you can see, the Devore have taken virtually no real losses at all, and between them they've got well over 200 kills, 200 to 300 kills between the four of them. That's very effective. I think this was a normal scale battle. The dismounted Druzina, a couple of them did good, the ones that got the archers, but again they routed quickly. Again, proving versus Russia, the French infantry is much better. The British axemen, again, look how quickly they went. They got rid of those spearmen fast, but they got owned. So I mean, like, in my opinion, Russia is dangerous as a rush faction in a high period, and it's got good skirmishing capability. But if the Druzina fail, they're going to lose badly, because you don't have much else beyond. Your infantry is really not very strong. It's capable, but it's not very strong. Not in particularly long, grind-out fights. So, definitely, faction-wise, they actually had the advantage, but it's just poorly implemented strategy and tactics resulted in a pretty landslide victory for us. I just wanted to point out, so some people like to blame it on the factions, and sometimes that can be the case. Some factions are definitely underpowered at times, but as far as Medieval 2 goes, it's not really the case in my opinion. There's a couple of factions that are not great, but most of them are all pretty well rounded in Medieval 2. Anyway guys, I do apologise for the long-windedness of my my commentary here. I hope it's not been too bad. It's been a little while since I've done any. I know it's been ages since I've done the Med 2, but I hope you guys are enjoying it, and I hope you enjoyed the battle. And thanks for watching. I'll link the Swedishlandsknekt channel. As you know, Swedes is my good mate from ages back now, and we always play together, and he's awesome ally, and his channel is awesome. If you've not seen it, I highly recommend it. Go check it out, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon next time.